Now the biggest reason I purchased the GameCube was because I wanted to play the Day of Reckoning games. I actually got both Day of Reckoning games and the GameCube for $50. Not a bad deal at all. For those of you who haven't played these games, they're actually the early versions of what has become to be the SmackDown vs. Raw series. So when it comes to the visuals, gameplay, and several other aspects, you're going to find that it's very similar to SmackDown vs. Raw. Some of you guys might know I really don't care for the SmackDown vs. Raw series. I feel the action is too slow, I hate the control, there's just a lot of reasons why I don't care for it. And with that said, there's aspects that I hated about SmackDown vs. Raw that originated here. For example, the action can be a little too slow. The timing to pull off a reversal is just too easy and they occur far too often in a single match. Other than those things I've mentioned, which I feel are pretty major, this really is a solid wrestling game, and much less sloppy than what we've seen in future releases. For example, the control scheme on SmackDown vs. Raw is just a fucking disaster, while this one is really easy to work with. It's weird how they consolidated so many actions into just a few buttons. Go figure. As you can see, when it comes to the visual quality, this game looks pretty great. However, some wrestlers don't look like who they're supposed to be. The Rock, Undertaker, Andre the Giant, they look like their real life counterparts. However, lesser known wrestlers look a little funny. When it comes to the features in the game, you have an excellent create-a-player system, you have plenty of modes to choose from, all the standards such as Hell in a Cell, Ladder, Tables, etc. Story mode wasn't anything amazing, pretty linear as well, nevertheless an enjoyable experience. I typically don't care for the music they use in these wrestling games because it's usually just shitty nu metal. However, the songs they use for the soundtrack in this game are actually pretty damn good, and they even play during matches, which makes the game a little more exciting. So even though Day of Reckoning plays like SmackDown vs. Raw, I actually enjoyed this one, and I give it a B. And moving on, I'm going to take a look at Day of Reckoning 2. I think it's safe to say that Day of Reckoning 2 tried to improve upon its predecessor. However, it does little to actually make the game any better. In fact, I think I prefer the first one. When it comes to the graphics, you're going to notice a definite improvement in the character models. They look much more realistic in this one. In fact, I think they look exactly the same as they did in SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. Unfortunately, Day of Reckoning 2 introduces a few things I could really live without. For example, much longer loading times. Not only does it take longer to load up a match, the load times in the create-a-player system are just fucking ridiculous. And for whatever reason, even the create-a-wrestler system takes a hit. You just have less to work with. The wrestler I made in the original Day of Reckoning looked pretty cool. However, when I tried to remake him on this one, he looked like a mongoloid. And something that I hated about SmackDown vs. Raw has been introduced into this game, the stamina system. For whatever reason, the stamina system was developed to stop entertainment cold. Basically how the stamina system works is, during the most inconvenient times like while you're beating up your opponent or you need to get away, your character becomes groggy and starts grabbing his head. When this happens, he can't move for shit. The stamina system is an incredibly great idea that makes fun games less fun. And unfortunately in this game, you don't have the option to disable it. And like I said earlier, the music they typically put in these wrestling games is just fucking terrible. However, Day of Reckoning had great music. Unfortunately, this one goes back to using terrible fucking music. I have to play this game with the sound off. Like I said, this game doesn't do much to improve upon the original. In fact, it makes me like the game less. But even with all the negative aspects I mentioned, overall this really is a solid wrestling game. I mean, a lot of the aspects I enjoyed in the original Day of Reckoning can still be found here, but a lot of the changes made don't exactly take the game in a good direction. So all in all, I give Day of Reckoning 2 a C. And if you're already playing SmackDown vs. Raw and enjoy it, you might as well stick with that. And just for the record, my favorite WWE games are still SmackDown Shut Your Mouth and SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. So if you guys haven't played those, I highly recommend them. They're just a lot more fun in my opinion. Well, that was my thoughts on these games, and until next time, you guys take it easy.